Hello, welcome to Business Brains and the Bottom Line podcast. My name is Paul Delegro, your host, and my guest today is Carrie Kerskie. She is the CEO of the Kerskie Group. She's also, it's going to take me a while to read off all your credentials, Carrie. She's an author, she's a cybersecurity culture speaker and trainer, and she's actually a fellow podcaster. And the name of her podcast is Privacy Mentor. Welcome to the show, Carrie.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Paul. I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So, and you've written some books too. I didn't know where to stop. Your bio was so long. I figured, we got to save time for the show. So,
absolutely, yeah. Let's just get to the heart of it and the good stuff.
Yeah, cool. So, you're the CEO of the Kerskie Group, and in reading up on your company, it was that you started out as a private investigation firm, but you're really focusing on security to kind of set the stage for where we want to go with this. Tell me a little bit about your company, what you guys do.
Sure. So our company, Private Investigation Agency, was started in Naples, Florida in 2001. And around 2006, we started getting calls from identity theft victims seeking assistance because there weren't a lot of resources back then. So we said, okay, we haven't done this before, but we're happy to, work through it with you because an investigation is an investigation. And word of mouth spread from there. And then I was asked to teach others in my industry how to, work with identity theft victims, handle these cases. That led to the development of the book because I was doing a lot of speaking and people are like, it's too much information put into a book. And so it's just kind of taken on a life of its own. But now that's all we do is work with victims of identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats.
Got it. Well, obviously, those are all the buzzwords today, right? Ransomware, identity theft, and it's bigger than ever. And hopefully, if we can overthrow Russia, we'll stop all the ransomware. So
yeah, wouldn't that be nice if that was that easy? We could stop it. Yeah, unfortunately, it's from all over the globe, and we even have some homegrown characters here as well.
Yeah. So and I think you had told me in our previous conversation that you do a couple different things. You do a lot of work with private individuals, a lot of times that have a lot of wealth and a lot of security risk, and you do corporations as well. Is that accurate?
Yes, correct. So as far as on the individual side, again, many people come to us that are a victim of identity theft. So part of the platform that we use is we don't just fix the one problem and send them on their merry way. Yeah. We look to identify ways that we can minimize their risk going forward, because once your information's out there, it's out there and it's going to be sold and resold and shared with other bad guys. So we try to also put things in place to minimize their exposure. Basically, we call it making them less attractive to the bad guys than somebody else. So make them difficult targets. And the same thing for businesses. And really where we got into the business side is technology is technology. It doesn't matter where you use it. It's still the same technology. And we're seeing that the mistakes that people were making on the individual side are the same mistakes that are being made in the corporate setting. But obviously, when a mistake in the corporate setting takes place, this has a significant impact because then you have a data breach and, you're on the 6 o'clock news and everything else. Yeah. So really it just boils down to the limiting beliefs that everyone has around how they use technology.
Yeah, no, good point. And so there's a lot of ways the bad guys can get in, right? It can be on your mobile phone. It can be through email. It could be just through hacking into your system through the internet. What are you seeing out there? What are the main ways that you and your customers are seeing people get hacked into?
Well, really, we're still seeing a lot of it is they are preying on people's lack of understanding of how technology works. Okay. Again, these preconceived notions that we all have, and they're set by our own individual experiences, what we hear about from our friends and family, what we're seeing in the media, what we're seeing on TV, and that creates this perfect storm of fear. But that fear also keeps us from asking for help, asking for validation, or for sharing with others when something happens to us for fear of embarrassment.
Right, exactly.
The bad guys, they totally take advantage of this.
Yeah, that's the big one, I think, the shame of it, right? Oh, I got hacked, and people take personal responsibility. Oh, I did something wrong. I don't want to admit it. And that's kind of the problem with ransomware, too, is a lot of companies pay the ransomware because they just want to be done with it and not get their name in the news. right?
Exactly. Yep. We hear a lot of that, is that I don't want to be on the 6 o'clock news. Let's just take care of it. And, hopefully if it's under the threshold to where it doesn't have to be a public notification,
Right.
depending on what information was exposed. So there are a lot of little nuances there, but yeah, most of the time people are just like, I just want to forget this ever happened and move forward.
Okay. So we've kind of identified a few things here, but as you're dealing with companies, say we'll say it, keep it at the corporate level. In my experience, we're an IT consulting company, so we do a lot of consulting around security. From what I've seen, there seems to be a disconnect between the leaders and the staff and the workers, in the sense that the leaders think it should be a fun thing to do to get boned up in cybersecurity, and the workers, the teammates tend to think that this is just a pain in the neck and it's not worth it. It's not good for me. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%. You see threads on Twitter and all over social media complaining about these awareness training programs that companies are putting in, and they're like, "Oh, this is ridiculous." Or when they do something right and they report the right thing, they get dinged because the system didn't recognize it. It is a mess out there, and really the approach that companies are taking, while it's well intended, it's well informed, or I should say misinformed.
Right.
And they think that the employees are just going to jump on board and be like, yes, let's do this for the team. Let's, all, round up around this and support it, and let's do it. Employees have so many other things going on that in their mind, it goes back to that, what is it, WIFM, the what's in it for me. So
it's true, though. I mean, that is so true, though.
Yeah, we all have, our wants and needs and motivations that keep us from, or that make us do what we do. So when companies are constantly, berating their staff with, okay, you have to take this online training, and okay, we're going to fish test you this week. Well, all this does is create this environment of fear and blame and shame.
Yeah.
And nobody thrives in that environment.
Yeah. Well, being on the consulting side, I've seen this a million times where, everyone starts pointing fingers. Right. And that's
Absolutely.
No one wins. What I've seen, the successful companies kind of include everyone in the process and make them feel part of the process without the finger pointing. You got to get away from that.
You got to get away from the finger pointing, and you also have to shift that fear to confidence or empowerment.
Okay.
And like you're talking about involving the employees, sometimes they have information and insight that the C-suite doesn't, that could really impact and help the company. Also, it's the approach. Like I said before, technology is technology. Doesn't matter where you use it. So why are we always teaching it from a corporate perspective when employees want to know how to protect themselves? That's the number one concern. When there was a evaluation or a survey sent out of what are the things that people want most as an employee benefit, and within the top 3, one was an identity theft protection service. And it was only because that fear of that's going to happen to me. So if they would shift the training to be more of, here's how to protect yourself. It's something the employees want to learn how to do. They're going to take the time to learn it, which develops into a habit that goes back and protects the company. Because again, technology is technology. Doesn't matter where you use it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I mean, it kind of like what you had said earlier, what's in it for me? Personal protection. Everyone's got an interest in that.
Absolutely. Everybody has a smartphone, tablet, PC, somewhere they're connected to the internet, and especially now because of COVID. So people that might have been tech adverse, well, they were forced to use it in order to stay in contact with their loved ones. So now, pretty much everybody has access to this, and they're using it. But it's that fear. It's, that fear is what does it. So I say that the way that you can make sustainable changes within an organization and within your team is you have to address the 3 H's: the head, the heart, and the habit.
Okay. Explain.
Yeah. So with addressing the head is you have to get into their mindset and really what is their motivation? Why are they doing what they're doing? Well, a lot of it is that privacy versus convenience conundrum, where the more you have of one, the less you have of the other. Well, oftentimes people are making decisions around technology based on the convenience factor. They're not evaluating what the risks are associated with that. So they're limiting or reducing their privacy. So that's the head part, is that you have to really think about that. The next one is the heart. We talked about it briefly, and about this whole culture that's out there now around technology that is based on fear. We need to change that fear to confidence or empowerment. And how you do that is by opening the lines of communication. We have to have the freedom to be able to say, I don't understand. What is this? Show me what it is. We have to have the freedom to say, you know what? I don't think that's right. I'm going to ask somebody to help me. Or the freedom to say, you know what? I screwed up. I need help. How do I fix this?
Without feeling the shame, right? We talked about that earlier, right?
Exactly. So you have to change this fear that's going on, the emotion, and turn it into confidence. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to give people a tool that they can use to make them confident in their decisions. And that's where we get into the habit. And there are all different types of tools and techniques and apps that you can use. I like to keep things simple. So we've boiled it down to validate or eliminate. Doesn't matter if it's a letter, phone call, email, text message, whatever it is that comes across your desk or whatever technology decision you're making, validate it. Is it from who they claim to be, the sender? Identify what are all the risks that are going to be associated with this, or what are all the threats that could happen if you utilize this technology, and try to eliminate as many of those as you can. If you can't validate the information that you know to be true, then simply eliminate it, delete it, and get rid of it and move on.
Now, are you saying that some of the tools you provide, or is this saying this is a personal decision that someone's like, say, you got an email coming in or a text message coming in, is something that is automated, or is that the personal decision?
No, it's a personal decision, because what I find is that we are often depending too much on the technology. Thinking that, our company uses a scanner for phishing emails. So that
Right.
tells the employee, I don't have to do anything because the system's going to catch it. So we still need to have that human, and technology alignment, but the human can't be totally eliminated out of it. So that's why we just simple, easy, and it becomes an instinctive response, as opposed to, what was I supposed to look for? How do I do this? What did they tell me the red flags were? Validate or eliminate. It's really easy.
Yeah, one of the things, I tell my kids this: I never click on a link in an email ever.
Right.
If I get an email from my bank, which I do, I usually log in on my own, and normally it's a phishing email trying to scam you about something, and so that's just one piece of advice I give anyone who will listen.
Yeah.
Never
and
click
you're
on a link.
right. And that goes back to the validating.
Yeah.
So if you get an email with a link in it, how can you validate? Well, if you get an email from a friend, call your friend. Say, hey, did you send this to me? If it's from your bank, or if it's something that looks like it's from, let's say, Amazon about a purchase, log into your account. Don't click the link, just log into your account. So there are simple ways that you can validate. And if you go through those steps and you've used every tool that you have available, whether it's picking up the phone or taking the email and forwarding it to the supposed sender or logging into your account, if you can't confirm through those, delete it, eliminate it.
And that just takes practice, I'm assuming. How long, again, I'm not on the side that you're on about training and all that. How long does that take typically to get people to kind of buy into the system and feel positive about it and make those adjustments?
It really doesn't take much time at all, because it is so simple. And sometimes, I don't know why we tend to overcomplicate things, but just keep it really simple. I just recently did a training with a company, and afterwards everybody was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I never thought of it from this perspective before. And right away I got emails back from them going, whatever you said to our staff, it worked, because when we tested them again, it was significantly a difference, an improvement from what they had clicked on before. So it's taking the complication out of, look for these 5 things. Because what happens is, the bad guys modify those things.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
Now there's only 2 of the 5. So they're like, well, is this real or isn't this real? Or a big one that's still getting people is they get an email from HR that says, here's an update about payroll, or here's new procedures for taking holiday. People click on it because they think it's an internal one from HR. Again, pick up the phone, call HR. Hey, I got this email. Did you send this out? Or make it a practice of HR to say, here's the procedures of what we do when we're sending communication out to the team. So again, it's that validate or eliminate, but it's really easy to implement, because all you have to do is ask yourself every time, can I validate this? If not, delete it, eliminate it.
Yeah, no, all great points. What's your take? And I've asked other guests this. There's some things we can do, like multi-factor authentication and password programs to auto-generate long, complicated password. What's your thoughts on those?
Yeah, so I do like those. It's all about barriers and layers of protection. There's no one size fits all that, I implement this and I'll never have to worry about it again. It's all about layers. So the more layers, the better you are protected. And again, going back to the privacy versus convenience, if it's convenient for you, it's convenient for the bad guys. So
Right.
if to log into your accounts, it just takes a username and password, that's all it's going to take them. But if you have to do a username, password, two-factor authentication, and then maybe answer a security question or do something else, well, the bad guy's going to have to jump through all those hoops too. So that's where we bring that privacy and convenience, because it comes back to that.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of our customers are going to multi-factor authentication right now. It just seems, and some of the driver in that is to get cyber insurance.
Right.
Right. That's required. So we've had, we just finished up on implementation of that one of our customers because they had a deadline to meet that if they didn't have it by this date, they were in trouble with their insurance company. So, but we met the deadline, by the way.
Good. Yeah. And that's something I see a lot of companies where they will not roll out this crucial technology unless it's required. Unless their industry tells them to do it, unless it's a compliance issue, or unless they have to do it for insurance. And again, that goes back to having these open, honest conversations. There was a CEO of a company where the industry as a whole got hit by ransomware because the third-party software, the majority of it used, got hit with ransomware. So then it just passed through to everyone who used the technology. And on the call with the CEO, he said, I put $250,000 into my infrastructure to protect our organization. How did this happen? Nobody talked to him about the risk associated with using third parties.
Right.
But and he wasn't aware of it because he had his own limiting beliefs. He knew what he heard about, and he knew what compliance said, and he knew what the requirements were. Nowhere in there was any talk about third parties.
Yeah, that's a good point. Third party is another way that hackers are gaining access to systems, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
That's a big one right now. I've heard a lot of stories out there around that, but yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot that's going on out there, and I do agree that it is a multi-pronged approach to protecting companies. Yes, you have to have the technology side where you're fighting tech with tech. That is crucial because there are some things that don't even involve the human aspect. So I agree, you have to have that. You do need to have the awareness training, and you do need to do the phishing test because that's good practice to get into, and you need to have your policies, procedures, and the compliance training. But the area that I see where there's the big gap that isn't being addressed is where the human and technology collide.
Okay.
And that's because of the limiting cyber beliefs of the individuals. Nobody's addressing that. And until we address those and correct those and align everyone within the organization by building a cybersecurity culture,
right,
we're going to continue to still be vulnerable.
Well, that's part of your title. You just labeled it. You are a cybersecurity culture speaker and trainer. So that kind of ties right into what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and really all it does is that it's looking at everything from the human aspect of it. Right. And again, getting back to what motivates individuals to do what they do, how do they respond to technology, and how do they make decisions? And again, it all goes back to their underlying beliefs, their value system, their personal cyber culture. So take all that, align it, define what it is for your organization, get everybody on board. Teach your employees how to protect themselves. Sure. That keeps them motivated, and you can sustain this secure program for many years to come.
Yeah. So in part of your practice, do you actually make technology recommendations, or are you talking high level on how to manage those types of things, the psychology of it alone?
Yeah. So again, we deal more on the human side. When it comes to the technology and what to implement, we have other companies that we work with, such as companies like yours, that we would recommend to come in. Now, sometimes we will make recommendations, again, to kind of be that translator, so to speak, between the C-suite and the IT or the Cisco or whatever it might be. Because sometimes, you don't know what you don't know. And so sometimes C-suite doesn't know what questions to ask. So sometimes we do get involved with that and we'd say, what about doing A, B, C, D, and E? And then, the conversation ensues from there. But we tend to focus more on the human side.
Okay. Just again, so, I always end my shows, and we got a few more things to talk. I always, end my shows with, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, we'll get all that information out. But I wanted to make sure that, you explained exactly where you fit in the system.
Yes, and it
Yep.
is a little different niche.
Yep.
Where most people approach cybersecurity from the tech side,
Yes.
or the compliance side. So like I said, we're kind of in that little in between there that's being overlooked, and we're hoping that we can help companies patch.
Yeah, cool. So, what are some of the interesting hacks that you've seen? I think when we first talked, you mentioned something about an email hack that an interesting one that you wanted to share with the folks out there.
Yeah,
No,
so we have
we don't mention any companies, by the way.
no, not at all.
We're going to
So
protect the innocent.
so we have a client, and it's a client on the personal side, but they had CEO of a company for many years, recently had retired, but still have some of the connections and the contacts and going through that transition. And they reached out to me and said, my assistant's going to contact you because I believe my email has been compromised. So I just replied to the email and I said, okay, great. I'll let you know when I hear from her. Well, within seconds, I got an instant response or an automated reply back that said mail undeliverable due to mailbox being full. And when I looked at the email address it was referencing, it was not my client's email address. So I called him and I said, hey, I just want to check. I said, did you get my email? And he goes, yeah, I got it. Why? And I said, well, I got this response. Do you recognize this email address? He said, nope, never heard of it before. So he uses a particular email program, trying to do without you naming names of company here. But it's one where it has recently come to light, or more attention has been brought to this vulnerability that's in this particular email system. And what we did is we did like everybody says, change your password. That should take care of it. We did that. And I sent him another test email. Sure enough, same thing happened. So his assistant, I spoke with her. I said, send me the email that you received, what kicked back to you, wanted to compare them, make sure they looked the same. And so we logged into his account and the email account, and we looked to make sure there wasn't a forwarder set up, because sometimes if you get hacked, that's what they'll do. Nope, that wasn't there. And finally, I was like, oh, rules. I forgot about rules. Email rules are used to help manage an inbox. So if you get something from someone, it automatically goes to a specific folder, and it helps clear out the clutter in an email. Not many people use it. Some people use it, but in this case, client never even heard of it, didn't know what it was. We went and checked the rules setting. There were 2 of them there. And the 2 of them, they were named the exact same thing. Let's just call it a test. The first one had a test with a capital T. The second one had test with a lowercase t. So we knew they were connected. Well, the first rule said, if you get any emails from ABC Company, move it to the archive folder. The second rule said, all incoming mail, send a copy of it out to, and it was this email address that I saw on this autoresponder. So we knew that was what had happened. We deleted both of those rules. And I did another test and it worked fine. We didn't get the kickback. We knew it had been eliminated. But what I had the client do, I said, let's call this other company, where it said, remember the first one was for ABC Company, send to the archives. So contacted the company and their response was, oh yeah, about a year ago, we had an issue with an email. One of our vendors had an email problem and it came to us. He goes, but it didn't impact any of our customers and we took care of it. It was just on our email server on our end. They were completely unaware of the fact that what this malicious phishing email does, in addition to changing the rules, it sends an email from you out to all of your contacts. And when they click on the link, it looks like it's opening up for you to log into your email account. And you put in username and password. Looks like nothing happened. You're able to use your email, so you thought you logged in. What it did is it enabled the bad guys to insert these rules into your account. And and he never would have known. The client never would have known. We never would have known, because checking email rules is not something people, do on a regular basis. At least we didn't before. We are now.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for that fake scam email box being full, we never would have been aware of what was going on.
Yeah. And that's what happens, right? The bad actors, they get into your system and they kind of lurk for a long period of time, and they kind of go east, west in your system and navigate your system. And a lot of times go undetected for a long time.
Right. And like we said before, they change and they modify. This one, all the rules that say, if you think your email is compromised, do A, B, C, D, and E, none of those worked for this. because you
Wow.
had to go in and delete the rule that was established. So again, you gotta think outside the box for it, and then you got to look at other things and explore other possibilities, because there always seem to be 10 steps ahead, which is unfortunate.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what the answer is, right? I mean, I think the industry is trying to adapt by, like you said, adding several layers of security. And it's, seems to be slowing them down a little bit, but these are smart guys out there.
Right. Right. Yep. And we're seeing more with the social engineering. Before it would just be sending these phishing email out. Another one that we saw, and I actually got a copy of it, and it was from a bank where I have accounts. And the first one I got said that my password had been changed. The second one, and it was in a series of within a matter of a few minutes. The second one said that my preference was changed for how I want to receive my statements. And then the third one, what was the third change? Oh, the email address on file had been changed. Well, I knew to log into my account.
Yeah.
There were no alerts for it. I could log in. My password wasn't changed. There were no notifications. I checked the notices, the statements. There was nothing there.
Right.
But as I'm looking at this email, there were no links in the email. So there was nothing for anyone to click on. The phone number in the email was actually for the bank. So I'm looking at this going, what is the motivation? Normally
really.
you get you to click a link or to call a phone number.
Correct.
Yeah. So I called the bank and I said, okay, I know this is a scam. I've already checked all these things. I said, but I'm just trying to find out what the motivation is and if you've come across this. He said, what's happening? And they had recently received a lot of complaints. What happens is they send the emails out. Those emails, because all the red flags of the past don't apply, it's establishing trust. And then within 24, 48 hours, you get a phone call from someone pretending to be from the bank.
Oh, got it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the phone call, then that's where they established, oh, well, we sent you emails out, but we stopped everything. So if you logged into your account, you didn't see any of the changes because we caught it in advance. But what we want to do is make sure you're not having any problems with your computer. But before we do that, we need to verify your account information. So they're going to ask you for account information. And if they aren't satisfied with that, then what they're going to end up doing is telling you that they can check your computer or your device, and they're going to send you to a website for you to click a link to install remote access software so they can check your device. Now you gave them the keys to the kingdom.
Now you just open the front door.
Exactly. So this is another way they're modifying and elevating what they're doing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And again, it's that human part of it. I'd like to think I'm pretty aware of all this stuff, but I'm sure guys like me that are in the industry, we get fooled too every day, probably,
Right. And a lot of it is just, you're busy, and people don't want to have to take the time to think about things, or if you're in the middle of working on something and you get distracted, or usually the two best friends of these bad actors, fear and intimidation. And they use them to the best of their ability. And of course, the past couple of years, we've had a heck of a lot of fear and intimidation and confusion with everything that's been going on in the world. Yeah. And they've been taking advantage of it left and right.
So question, a lot has changed in the last 2 years. A lot has changed in the last 2 weeks, actually. But how has the pandemic affected your business personally and cybersecurity in general? Do you have a feel for that?
Yeah. So as far as with my business, because again, we work with the victims and we also try to help businesses and individuals minimize their risk going forward. We've had really the past couple of years have been our best years in quite a while. It's just because of the nature of what's happening out there. Another thing that we're seeing more getting back on the identity theft side. And this impacts on the businesses too, especially the businesses that are involved, the tools that are being used to do this. We're seeing a lot of money laundering identity theft. So what the bad guys are doing is, they couldn't launder money because most cash businesses were shut down, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. Yep. So they had to launder the money somehow. So they said, well, what can we use? They're sitting on a treasure trove of names, address, date of birth, and socials. Well, the financial industry said, okay, we have people that want to continue to open bank accounts and do investments and such, but they can't come in person. So let's, digital transformation. That was like the buzzword of 2020 and 2021 until today.
I hate that word, by the way, that phrase.
Me too. So by doing so, a lot of the checks and balances went out the window so that the process could be streamlined. So the bad guys just set up accounts. And now they're money laundering using victims' identities. And what happens is that when a bank suspects money laundering, they have to report that in a SAR report, suspicious activity report.
Yep.
That goes to the IRS and the FBI. And what we're finding this year, because of the changes in the tax law, people are getting 1099s for accounts that they don't even know they have.
Nice.
So again, all these things. And then the PPP fraud, the EIDL fraud, the unemployment application fraud. I mean, you name it, it was insane. Last year, the first quarter of last year, all we did was deal with PPP, EIDL, and unemployment.
Yeah, there was a lot of stories about that in the news about the PPL, just a lot of fraudulent loans out there.
Yes. Yeah. And all the bad guys did, and you could tell that it were rings doing it because the applications were the exact same thing. The financials are the exact same thing, but they would take your name and put the word either agriculture, farm, or LLC after it. And they would create fake financial documents and they would say, here's my business, and they would get loans. Yeah. And all you had to do was check, the Department of Corporations on the website, state by state, and you would have known that there was no business even registered in that state for that company. Yeah. But nobody checked it.
It gets depressing actually some days when you talk about all this stuff, but it is like Hyman Roth said in The Godfather, this is the life we chose.
Yeah, wasn't technology supposed to make our lives easier? Yeah. Wasn't that what we were promised? Yeah, I'm still waiting on that.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't found that yet.
So cool. Well, what advice, if someone thinks they're having some issues, what advice would you give them? In addition to calling you, by the way, or calling me,
right?
What advice would you give them to start out?
Really, the first thing is be careful where you get advice from. We've spent a lot of time helping people get out from under bad advice they receive. For example, one gentleman reached out to an attorney after his identity theft. The attorney had him file bankruptcy. So basically, he was admitting guilt to all that fraud and debt that was not his. And of course, by the time he contacted us, it was 5 years after the fact. There's nothing that we could do.
Yeah.
Another thing is we had another call from somebody else where their phone had either been SIM swapped or it was an account takeover. I forget which one, for their mobile phone account. So instead of them fighting it, they just got a new mobile phone number. Well, your mobile phone number is almost the equivalent of your Social Security in this digital age that we're in. So make sure you're getting advice from trusted, known, experienced resources. Ask them, how many people have you worked with? How long have you been doing this? What's your success rate? So that would be the first thing. But if you believe that you are a victim, especially if it's something identity theft related, you're going to need to have some sort of a police report. Now, trying to deal with local law enforcement, they may or may not be willing to do that, but you can always go to the Federal Trade Commission's website, which is identitytheft.gov, and you can file a report there. Now, they will have some steps and recommendations of what you can do afterwards. Those are very limited and very generic. So you want to make sure you talk to somebody else to make sure that you have all your bases covered. A couple of the things you can do: protect your credit. Easiest thing to do, because there are multiple different types of identity theft, fraud, and cyber threats. But new account fraud is when someone opens a credit account using your identity. Put a credit freeze. Easiest thing you can do. It is free. You contact each credit bureau directly. And 2 of the 3 bureaus, Equifax and TransUnion, you can set up a free online account and you can manage your freeze. Experian, it's a little tricky. If you set up the online account, you're getting a credit lock, not a freeze. In essence, they do the same thing, but with a lock, you may be giving up some of the rights afforded to you by the federal law that mandates credit freeze.
Okay.
So just do a freeze. The other thing is there are more than 3 bureaus. Everybody knows Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. We're seeing activity in addition to those 3 on Innovis and NCTUE. That's the National Consumer Telecom Utility Exchange. So make sure you're locking those down, or I shouldn't say lock, let me rephrase that. Make sure that you are freezing those as well. And you can always get copies of your free credit report by contacting the bureaus or go to annualcreditreport.com, a website by the Federal Trade Commission. For the business and corporate side and / individual side, passwords, strong passwords, minimum 12 characters. Think of it as a phrase. Use a line from your favorite song, book, movie. Store them in somewhere that's secure, either a password manager, or if you want paper and pencil, fine. Just lock it up in a secured location. And that does not mean underneath your keyboard, because I'm sure you've seen them there too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I use a password program. I think they're great. I encourage that and I use the auto-generated, gobbledygook that comes with it. So
yeah. And if you use them, two things to look for, and I'm sure you agree: encryption at rest and encryption in transit.
Yeah.
Because if not, your passwords are going to be intercepted. So those are a couple of things. Take advantage of as much security as offered by the organization, whether it's security questions, two-factor authentication, whatever it is that they offer. Use as much of it as possible up to your skill level. And if you don't understand something, call the company and have them explain it to you and walk you through it. Don't just say, I don't understand it, I'm not going to use it. You could be putting yourself at risk.
No, great advice. Well, I guess that's a good way to kind of end the show. But Carrie, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Sure. So just go to carriekerskie.com, which is CarrieKerskie. And you can also tune into the podcast, which is Privacy Mentor Podcast.
Awesome. I listened to a couple of episodes before the show to kind of get a feel for your personality, and good stuff. Very entertaining.
Thank you. Yeah, we try to keep it at 10 minutes or less, just short, sweet, to the point of what's the threat, how does it impact you, and what can you do to protect yourself?
Awesome. Well, Carrie, again, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. I learned a lot. I hope the listeners out there did as well.
Well, thanks so much for having me on it. I appreciate it. And we'll have to have you on Privacy Mentors and the next time.
Would love to. Thank you. And that's a wrap of Business Brains and the Bottom Line. This is Paul Delegro. Until next time.